there are several beliefs that have come down through the ages which are completely false. One of these is Jewish unity, and the other is Jewish common sense. Both are totally false. No one has to tell you about Jewish unity. I had the privilege of traveling around the United States with Professor Dr. Aryeh Eldad, trying to help raise funds for Gush Katif. What we saw is that most people in the States simply could not have cared less. They couldn't care, they weren't interested. We were told in places that we don't want to say anything against the Israeli government, it's not right, we're embarrassed. When my wife, Rachel, spoke in Montreal, she was told that it's only because the Rav of the shul, who's Chabad, wanted her to speak, that she was being allowed to speak. Otherwise, everyone had been told to avoid her and have nothing to do with her. The government of Israel and its representatives put a cherem on us, and we no longer had any status. When the struggle for Gush Katif began, I knew not to expect anything from the Jews in name only, or the genetic Jews, or the Reform movement, which is the left wing of the Democratic Party with Yon Tovim, or organizations like J Street and the like, or rabbis for human rights. They talk about tikkun olam, but for them tikkun olam, saving the world, really means impressing the Gentiles by their humanistic values and their progressive values, and, forgive the slang, throwing their fellow Jews under the bus. So I expected nothing from them, and I wasn't disappointed in my expectations. The ones who disappointed me, the ones who broke my heart, were our own. The same people who are hysterical over digging up a Crusader cemetery in Barzilai Hospital couldn't have cared less when our graves were dug up in Gush Katif. Not a word. It made no difference. Now, when the vote came in the Knesset, when we were supposed to lose very big, the party that represents these people voted with the government. Now, it's not for an Am Ha'aretz like me to question the opinions of Gedolei Torah, but when there was a headline the day after the vote in the newspaper Yated Neiman, which said, Olam HaTorah Lifnei Gush Katif. Gush Katif was about to be destroyed. Olam HaTorah wasn't about to be destroyed, but the government offered them an extra sum of money for Kollel families. And so to make life easier for Kollel families, our Kollelim, our shuls, our yeshivot, our farms, our livelihood could go down the drain, and it didn't bother them in the least. One of the things the government feared tremendously was that there were so many soldiers with kippot, and they were very much afraid that these soldiers would refuse to take part in the expulsion. These were all young men. Many were from Hesder yeshivot, and they looked to their Rabbanim for guidance. And in most cases, the Rabbanim never said a word. And the reason is that if they had said that the men should refuse orders, then the government might not fund the yeshivot anymore, and they had to keep the yeshivot going. So again, people we counted on let us down. The grand total at the end of soldiers who refused orders was 65, two of whom were officers and 63 privates. There were numerous horrifying examples, and my wife is now giving me the look of death because she sees I'm getting into my anti-Semitic mode, which she warns me about constantly. But there's one that bothered me more than everything else. When our young men and women were in our shul, and they were sitting and crying and saying Tillim and begging for the Lord to save us, along came a carload of representatives of Moetzet Pesha who were escorted to the shul by police. The police were using their nightclubs to beat the kids to move aside so that these representatives could enter. These people then laid down, and the same police carried them out, and they were filmed being carried out so they could brag about how they had fought and how they had sacrificed to save Gush Katif. It is really very small wonder. I never lost my faith in the Almighty. I was born religious, and I will remain religious. But my faith in Jews was very severely damaged. That I did not turn my back on Jews is because of a handful of truly exceptional people, many of whom are here in this room, people who have continued the struggle, who have shown us what the truth is, what justice is, what right is. I always understood that a country that's founded by people from Eastern Europe, where corruption is endemic, and by people from the Middle East, where corruption is normal, so the country's corrupt, mela. But suicidal? Why would they be suicidal? This simply has driven me crazy. But when I look at Aliza, yes, Aliza wasn't in Gush Katif, but when she came and she stayed, and she fought alongside us. She gave me tremendous inspiration. Now, everybody had to come to some explanation of why Kadosh Baruch Hu abandoned us. And the only answer I ever came up with is, we had been there for 5 years, 6,000 missiles had fallen on us, and only one person had been killed by these missiles during that time. How could... We saw nisim, we saw miracles every day. How could these miracles have stopped? And the only answer I came up with is, God protected us against the Gentiles, but when it was the Jews who were destroying us, he just backed off. I can't think of any other explanation. I have no doubt in time I'll come to some feeling. But I see Avery Harris here. I see my brother. I see my wife, who is about the bravest person that I know. I see people here who have, despite everything, never lost their faith, never lost their belief, and will continue to fight so that Be'ezrat Hashem, and not anybody else, we will be able to return to Gush Katif.